guys, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. We're super excited to have you. Would you mind just saying your names and a little bit about your entrepreneurial background?
Sure thing. We're excited to be here too. My name is Brent Webb. My wife Sue is with me today, and we've had the wonderful opportunity to be here on the BYU Hawaii campus, beautiful campus, to share some thoughts on some of the business experiences that I've had throughout my life.
Cool. So I understand you have done a number of businesses. You built them and sold them. For you, what kind of inspired you to want to pursue being an entrepreneur? Because I feel like it's something that maybe runs in your blood. You've done a few of those. What was kind of the beginning to your journey with that?
You know, the first one, my first business, I'd say it was more of an infant business. I, in a lot of ways, didn't know what I was doing. I thought I could do it better than the company I was working for, and I kind of jumped off not knowing what I was getting into. But I learned along the way the steps and the systems, putting procedures in place and systems in place to set my business up as sort of a franchise prototype so that I could repeat it as a company that knew what it was doing, I guess. Because I truly didn't know a lot of those things.
That's cool. So something I think that's super fascinating when I was listening to you talk a little bit about your business, because you had an air filtration company, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think what's really interesting that you did that attracted attention from other competitors or other people is that you set up your business, but then you also set up, will you talk about this a bit, how you made it as a template for a franchise? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I call it a franchise prototype,
mm-hmm.
meaning that such as a McDonald's or In-N-Out Burger, they document everything that takes place in their business. When to flip a burger, how to do this, how to do that. And I realized after running my business for several years, when I was just working and felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, just working harder, I realized I had to work on my business and not necessarily in my business. And
mm-hmm.
at that point, I realized that I needed to put things in place, systems, policies, procedures, all compiled into an operations manual that basically told everyone how we do things here.
That's cool. So you'd say maybe the biggest pivot that other people could use, maybe that have businesses, is instead of to take it one step further than a business, you're creating operations manuals, systems, and things that other people potentially starting that same business, franchising or whatever, can use. Would you say that was like one of the bigger differentiators for it?
Definitely. Not that you have to have franchising in the plans for your business, but setting it up as if it were as someone could pick up your operations manual and take that and go open a new business just like it. So you mm-hmm. document everything that you do, how you do it. Every appliance that you buy comes with an operations manual that tells
right.
how to use it,
mm-hmm.
what this button does, what that button does, and so on.
Cool. So maybe just talking a little bit about your story of like how you got started. Was this something that happened after you graduated? What kind of got you into the business in the first place?
My graduation came from HKU, which is Hard Knocks University.
Okay.
I didn't graduate from college, and I really don't regret that.
Oh yeah.
I started out my career in sales, and I sold air filters. I loved it. I did very well at it. I was a friend to people and an easy guy to deal with, I think, and so people bought from me, and I worked my way up within the company I was working for selling filters. And then I just felt like I could do this better on my own, or I could do the same thing and put the money in my pocket.
Right.
And so I jumped off and started my own, but I realized that there's a lot more to it. I've used the analogy sometimes to people that I've heard people say that if you're a good cook, for example,
mm-hmm.
they should start a restaurant. Well, that's the worst reason to start a restaurant, is because you're a good cook. Because if you're a good cook, you should go be a chef in a great restaurant.
Right.
If you're a good cook and you start a restaurant, you'll never cook again. You'll
mm-hmm.
be running the business, and that's not what you signed up to do. And I
right.
think a lot of people don't realize that when they go into business.
Right. So I'm assuming for you, maybe air filtration wasn't like your passion. I don't know, maybe it was, but is it more just like a drive to be an entrepreneur and build things that kind of...
Yeah, it wasn't my drive. It's what I knew, I guess, was air filtration, and I had developed a lot of friendships with customers and people and I knew the industry, and it was an easy thing for me to jump off and get into. Maybe transition into my second business, which was RPM indoor kart racing. I had a passion for racing, for motorsports, and for fun. And so jumping off or deciding to do that was truly a passion that I wanted to pursue. But fortunately for me, I had learned the process to set up that, what I'll call franchise prototype in my filter business, and I ended up selling it because it was so set up so well and organized. And I took that and implemented it into my go-kart track before I even opened the doors for most of it. I mean, it was most of those things. An operations manual is a live document, and you change it and update it as you go on. But we had the great foundation of what we were going to do. So when employees came on board, they would open the operations manual of how we do things here, and they would know exactly what to do, and they'd be trained to those standards. So the customers would come in and get a consistent experience each and every time.
That's really cool. For you, I think it's super fascinating. You've done multiple businesses. For you, what made you want to just sell your old one and just completely move on to something new? I feel like some people, they've been doing their business for 15, 20 years. Maybe they don't really want to change or pivot, or what was it that made it happen for you?
It's hard to say. I think it's something deep inside of me that likes to, I think I like to create things. And I think it's crazy when you start a business, it's your baby, it's yours. You started it from the ground, and it's hard to let go of it when you sell it. And when you do sell it and let go, it's almost like a piece of you is missing, and it's like you want to start something else to take its place. So you're always looking for that, looking forward. I consider myself to be somewhat of a dreamer too, and I always look for that next, if I buy a new car, I still might be looking at, hey, my next car is going to be this, or my next this. I'm on vacation right now in beautiful Hawaii, but I'm thinking, hey, I might go to Bali sometime, or wherever it may be. So I'm always forward thinking and thinking of the future that way. And I think my business is much that way as well. And once I sold my filter business, I was super excited to do an indoor go-kart track, just because it was something new, something most people hadn't seen. And as I started getting into it and seeing what I could do and putting that, what I call the wow factor on it, to make it an amazing, cool place, it empowered me to do that. So
I love your phrase, the wow factor. I feel like that's something that is definitely beneficial for every person and every business. You want to talk a little bit about what that is, maybe for your business, and how that could be applied to other businesses?
Sure. I told the story in the speech today, but years ago someone told me that if you hand someone your business card and they don't say wow, then it's time to get your business card redesigned and reprinted.
Okay.
And I take that even a step further. If somebody maybe even look at it yourself and see your business logo, yourself, the way you present yourself, your company website, whatever it may be, if you can't look at that and say wow, then it's time to redo it. My dream for RPM was I wanted people to walk in the front door and say wow. I wanted people to get out of their racing carts and say wow. And I think I accomplished that. I truly accomplished it to what my vision was. When you walked in the front door of RPM, you were greeted by a real NASCAR race car that people said, wow.
Right.
You had 20-foot high glass walls in front of you that separated the conditioned space from the racetrack. And you'd have go-karts going 40 miles an hour right past you, where you're right up against the glasses between you and them, and a barrier system. But you could see right up close and personal the go-karts going around at 40 miles an hour. Cool. And most people said, wow, I want to do this. Right. So, and then they would go do it, and they had such a great experience that they said, wow. So that's what I call the wow factor.
That's really cool. What is maybe one of the biggest challenges you didn't foresee when you started, let's say the go-kart company? Something that,
Um, I used the term in there earlier today also that you don't know what you don't know.
Uh-huh.
And there were a lot of things that I didn't know about before. One was that it took 10 months to get a use permit to operate my business in
Oh,
that
wow.
area. And that was difficult to go through. So I think it's you're going to always be faced with things that you don't know the answer to, or you don't even know that you don't know.
Right.
And
Especially when it's a whole new industry, right?
exactly. There was not a there were very few indoor go-kart tracks in the U.S. that I could go to and look at even, and the ones that I did go to, I didn't want mine to be like theirs.
Mhm.
So I really had an open slate to create it the way I wanted to. Some of the things I didn't foresee were some of the I always want to please every customer.
Right.
But when you have 10 people in a race, adrenaline's flowing.
Only one of them's winning.
one of them's wins, so really you have one happy customer. And then you have 9 guys or girls that are complaining that the cart didn't work right.
Right.
The person cut them off. Somebody hit me, somebody this. So although I've always believed the customer's right, you want to take care of the customer, that's one business that is tough to do that in. You want to have empathy for them, but you can't be giving away 9 free race passes for them to come back because they didn't win.
Right. So that's super interesting. What's like maybe a piece of advice, something you learned while starting this business up that you could give to other people that are interested in starting a business, whether that be like fresh out of college or they've had their career for a while and they want to do it? What's like an entrepreneurial lesson you've learned that might be useful for them?
I think the essence of a true entrepreneur is the ability to figure things out and to figure out what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
To find out a way to make something happen. People will tell you no all the way along.
Right.
But if you can figure out a way to make it work, that's the way to do it. And a lot of people look at a business like RPM that was a pretty big project,
Uh-huh.
at least for a dumb guy like me. But it started with a dream, and then it started with a list of things I wanted to have in it, and then I took that list and broke it down by, breaking this down and breaking that down, and then finding this supplier and that supplier, and then finding a building, and then finding this, and it's a whole process of having that dream at the end, but following the path to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
After the talk today, one of the guys came up to me and he knew that I had talked about the importance of an operations manual in there.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "How do you start that? How do you create an operations manual?" And it's kind of simple. You just start with a list of what you need in it, and then take each one of those and write it up. And you're going to have your operations manual. It might have 1 page in it to start with.
Right.
But then you write the next thing up and you have 2 pages, and all of a sudden 2 become 4 and 4 become 8, and all of a sudden you end up with a big operations manual. I told the story in there too that when our first day of business, we opened at 11 o'clock, and it was frantic around there for the first day opening.
Okay.
And we had automatic glass doors that opened up, motion detector doors, which were kind of cool. And we turned the doors on to open. We had a big ribbon there. We had, 100 people probably outside in the parking lot lined up to come in. We cut the ribbon and they came in, and we were open for business. And we thought we had documented everything and trained every employee and knew what we were doing. But I used the story in there that we closed up at midnight that first night, and we were thoroughly exhausted, and we literally sat on the back manager's office floor. We didn't even have desks back there yet. And we realized, how do we count this money and balance it to the point of sale system?
Right.
It said we did this much, how much is in the drawer, how much is credit cards? We didn't have a system for doing that because I hadn't done that yet.
Gotcha.
But we immediately created that, and it was a fine-tuned document, if you will, that we had an opening balance, a closing balance, how much cash, how much credit card, and then It was set for the next day to know how much to open the drawer with. We had it set to, hey, we wanted to start with $200 cash in there, and we had to have X number of $20 bills, X number of $10 bills, extra number of five,
Super
one.
just detailed
Yeah,
down. For the
so
whole
you
thing.
break it down, and that didn't happen the day we opened for business.
Right.
But the first day we realized that we didn't do that, so we did it. You know, it was probably a week or two into it when we had the first one done, and it's so much harder to do it, more difficult to do it when you're open for business. Especially, this business was open for business 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
So finding the time to do those things, that's where you really need to work on your business, and not
Right.
in your business.
You can't be the guy behind the taking the money all
Exactly.
day long, otherwise the systems will never get
Exactly
built.
true. Exactly true.
You-
But it's a process, and you fill up that operations manual with each of those documents as you go, and you think of something new, and it's like, hey, we should document how we do that. So
Right.
you want your customer greeting to be the same by everyone. You can detail an operations manual down to how we answer the phone.
Right.
You know, whatever your statement is, your saying is, so that people aren't rude on the phone.
Right.
So.
You talk a lot about the importance of hiring the right people, just because you and I'm sure most business owners have been burned by a lot of employees that weren't optimal. What are some things you look for to help you know when someone is not a good candidate, and really just find good employees?
I'll have to say that was my biggest challenge in every one of my businesses, because some of the people that I truly interviewed and thought were the best candidates turned out to be the worst candidates, and some people that I didn't think would fit in perfectly and stayed for years as great, valuable employees. So it's really hard, really difficult to do that. I really wish that in business there was a way that you could kind of try before you buy, if you will.
Right.
You know, bring someone in for a week-long internship or something
Right.
to sample them out, make sure it's a good fit for us or for them. I'm from the state of California, and it's so difficult to terminate someone if they don't work out. And
Right.
there's so many things involved with that. That was my biggest frustration in running a business was employees, dealing with employees. And we had, high of 50 employees, low of probably 30 to 35 at different
Wow,
times.
so pretty.
And just to cover, we had 2 schedules every day to cover a 12-hour period. And so you have a lot of people, and it's just difficult to. It's rarely a time. There is rarely a time that you have 100% of your employees are happy and you're happy with them, and it's tough. Especially ours were. Some were full time, but a lot of them were part time and college students and things like that. So, all those things made it just a little more difficult too.
Gotcha. For you, what is some aspects of your business that you really like working on? Like some things that, I don't know, maybe you're particularly passionate about. It sounds like operations manuals are things you've really dug deep on.
I have to say I don't like working on the operations manuals and those things,
Right.
but they're one of those necessary evils. I
Gotcha.
think
Okay.
if you work on those and get them in place, then everything is a lot smoother.
Right.
Employees are happier, customers are happier, business owners are happier. Tell me your question again, because
What did you like working
Yeah, what do you
on?
like working on? What are you
Yeah.
passionate about in
So
your
I know the
business?
answer to that.
Okay.
What did I like working on?
The creative part of it.
Yeah,
Creating new things. The wow.
I am kind of a dreamer, and I always think of how cool things could be. And that was the fun. I think that's part of the reason I sold it as well, is it's kind of like I've been there, I've done that, I'm ready for something else, and it was the dreaming it up, the designing it part, that is my favorite part, I guess you could say.
Okay, cool. For you, just because you've done this a few times, when you're ready to, you've done your dreaming and building of the business and you're ready to sell it, what process do you go about to initiate that? Do you find a business broker, or how does that usually look?
I believe that, I've heard the saying before too, that one buyer is no buyer.
Mhm.
If somebody comes to you and wants to buy your business, it usually doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
You need to have multiple people looking at it and know that they're bidding against each other sort of on it. So I had someone interested in, to answer your question, I did use a business broker
Okay.
all 3 times.
Okay.
Same person, same business, all 3 times. And what we did is, every time also I had a specific buyer, strategic buyer if you will,
Uh-huh.
but we took it a step further and we sent out a blind cover profile of my business to probably a dozen companies that we thought would be potential buyers for the business as well.
Okay. So you specifically like
We
found
selected
people
them,
you thought, okay.
and we basically, it's called a blind cover because when they receive it, they don't know who it is. They could probably figure it out,
Mhm.
but along with that is a non-disclosure statement that they sign for confidentiality reasons.
Mhm.
And like the first one we sent, I had one specific buyer, but we sent out another 10 or 12.
Uh-huh.
We probably had 6 or 8 of those come back with interest in the business.
Oh, okay.
And then everybody then knows too that they're looking at the business, but other people are looking at it as well.
Right.
And so when you can find more of a synergistic fit
Uh-huh.
for a buyer and find something, a reason why they want or need your business,
Uh-huh.
you can focus on that a little more, and that helps drive the price up as well. If you use just an accountant, they're going to tell you it's, X times EBITDA profit.
Right.
And that's kind of the rule of this old school rule of thumb. But if you can sell your business